Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March the 14th, and we're now in the Committee of the Whole. We have several items on the agenda this morning, including the need to go into executive session for a brief moment at the conclusion of our meeting. And we also have a presentation at the beginning of our meeting regarding solar panel program. At this time, I'd like to officially welcome everyone here to our meeting, call this meeting to order. And we'll begin with the approval of the minutes, item 1A, the approval of minutes from February the 14th, 2023, and get a motion for approval. A motion by Commissioner Wynn, second by Commissioner Wilder. Commissioner Wilder. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Will be sent to consent agenda next Tuesday. Our next is going to be a presentation of the solar panels for Macon-Bibb County. A presentation from Cherry Street Energy. The last meeting we had, or at least 2 meetings ago, there were some questions asked about our solar panel program. And the value of that and about adding those on and just basically the ins and outs of that. So we have a presentation this morning, I believe, perhaps a PowerPoint as well as a speaker. Is that correct? Okay. At this time, we'll ask those that are here to present to come forward to the microphone.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Happy Cherry Blossom. We don't have a response for Happy Cherry Blossom?
It's close. It's not here yet. It's close.
All right. So some questions about the solar power program and our initiative. This program started years ago with the last administration. So we asked representatives from the company, Cherry Street Energies, to come and give you a who, what, when, where, and why of our solar power program. So with that, I will turn it over to Cherry Street Energies.
Thank y'all for having me today. My name is Kenneth Darasol, and I am Macon-Bibb's portfolio manager for Cherry Street Energy. And so today I wanted to, first off, thank you all for having me. Thank you for this partnership, and just kind of go through, beginning with a quick review of what the program is, how long it's been here, and then end with kind of where the financials stand and what we're looking to do with the last set of sites, and kind of a 3-year look into the future with where we think everything will be. And so we're Cherry Street Energy. It's a power company. We generate 100% renewable energy, and we make it simple for municipalities and organizations to become more sustainable. Next slide. So we do this by designing, building, maintaining, operating, and improving the solar systems that we install over time. And doing that requires additional expertise. And so we basically become a department, of your facilities team. And if there are any questions, if you need any maintenance issues, we come in and we handle that. There are no additional charges. Our job is to get the solar arrays up, running, and make it as simple as, anytime you need any questions or any concerns, you can come to us, or you can use our monitoring platform to look at how much energy you are producing at any given time. Next slide. So again, the benefits are no upfront investment. So Macon-Bibb pays nothing upfront, no maintenance costs, and then no hidden fees, no tricky tariffs, just straightforward, clean, transparent energy rates, and above all, price certainty over 20 years. Because, with a lot of the economic changes that have happened as of late, we've seen gas and other energy prices kind of rise and become a little bit more volatile. Well, this allows Macon-Bibb to more or less hedge a part of that and have an idea of at least some of the energy that they will, or that you will require, and the cost of that energy. So this is the piece that I just mentioned, the monitoring and signage. So at any given time, if the facilities team, Mr. Riles, if they need to look and see how much energy Macon-Bibb is producing across the portfolio, or just at a single site in a single instant, they can pull up that information and take a look, send that screenshot wherever it needs to go. And then the billing side of this, again, very simple and straightforward. No extra fees, no additional tariffs, just how much energy did you use. the rate agreed upon, and the total. Next slide. And then finally, I wanted to talk about how solar works in general, how our solar program works in conjunction with your current utility. And this is, again, finally before going into what's specific to Macon-Bibb. And so basically, the power comes in from the solar panels. The sun shines, the solar panels create power. That power goes to a solar inverter and then into the electrical panel. The Macon-Bibb facilities use that power first, and then any additional power comes in from the grid through the utilities meter and into that same electrical panel. And so there's never any, we work in tandem with your current utility. We look at them as partners, and we actually work with them on every site that we install on. And so this is one of a slide that kind of speaks to the portfolio and Macon-Bibb in general. Macon-Bibb started this. Macon-Bibb was one of the first, and we've had quite a few municipalities come behind Macon-Bibb and basically follow your lead. I mean, we get questions all the time about the number of sites you all have, the initiative you all have taken, and quiet as kept. You all do this without, any, this isn't something where you're looking for a pat on the back. There aren't any huge extreme energy goals out there, this by 2035. You all just are doing the right thing, and that's commendable. That is awesome, and I wish more municipalities could take note of that. And so what I want to do is go into what you all have accomplished so far since the inception of this program. So far, you've installed solar on 9 facilities, equaling 850 kilowatts of capacity. That's around 1,382 megawatt hours. And to put that into perspective, it's about 1.18 million pounds of carbon that you've offset, meaning you haven't required it from a utility or from any other sort of power source that may not be renewable. You've actually generated this energy yourself, and that generation would be the equivalent of 190 homes' annual usage of electricity, or about the amount of miles, about the amount 2.4 million miles driven by the average like four-door passenger car, or about the amount of carbon that 1,159 acres of trees would sequester in a year. And so absolutely amazing. I'm so proud of this portfolio and what you all have done. And just to kind of go through the sites pretty quickly here, we have sorry about that. We have arrays at the Sheriff's Office, 167 kilowatts. Next. Animal Welfare, which is a ground mount. Next. South Bibb Rec Center. Tax Commissioner's Building. The Juvenile Justice Center. North Macon Park. And these last 4 are the most recent installations ending in December. And they represent kind of your parks and recs, which is amazing. I remember the summer programs that were going on while we were doing these installations, and the kids who were in the building asking questions, trying to get an understanding of what solar is it something that they can do in the future? It was just amazing to see that, and it's inspirational. And then these are the ones that you all just approved, and again, taking another step forward. So the last 3, Bloomfield Library, Fire Station 7, and the facilities building. And that will put you up to 12 facilities in total. Next slide. And now we get into what the financials look like based on that. And so the way the agreement with Macon-Bibb is set up, we will never charge you a rate that is higher than the average rate of your utility your utility rate at that particular site or that group of sites that are put in together. And so what that means is, although this program is relatively young, with the last 4 sites being completed within the last 3 or 4 months, the last 6 sites being completed within the last year, and I'd say 90% of the portfolio being completed in the last couple of years, you still have a small savings of $134, and that's just what you would pay when you combine what you pay Cherry Street and what you pay your utility. Now, over time, that gap will continue to grow, and that's because of our rates being stable or more or less very low escalation, lower than inflation, and the historic cost of utility power. But outside of just solar, we also provide utility and sustainability analysis. And so for sites, for instance, where Macon-Bibb may have decided that solar was not the best route, including the Centerplex, what we've been able to do there is look at the tariff that you all are currently on and recommend a different tariff. And in making that change or making that observation, an additional $73,000 have been saved, which, I mean, more or less, to me, that's just amazing. And it's something that we provide for every site that we review for solar for you all. When we look forward, by 2026, taking into account the widening gap between Cherry Street rates and your current utilities, when we look at the 3 years of increased rates that have been approved by the PSC, and when we look at the proposed arrays as well as the arrays that are relatively new that have not been operating for 12 months yet, we're looking at about $125,000 in total savings. About $40,000 of that would come from your actual solar portfolio, with about 5 or 6 coming from those rate change savings at Macon Centerplex. And so that is a quick review of who we are and what we do and where you all stand as a program. Again, I'm really proud of this program. You all are leaders in the state. You have the most diverse solar portfolio that I've seen in Georgia, and you are currently every day inspiring other municipalities and other authorities to want to take this same charge. City of Savannah is just the most recent of quite a few. So thank y'all.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Mr. Wynn?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for being here. I've had this kind of questionable relationship with solar panels myself. How long do they last?
So the average solar panel lasts from 20 to 30 years, and I say that speaking to the ones that we source, because we own and operate and maintain these over the life of the contract. We actually source top level. We try to get what is going to be the most quality panel that is provided at a cost that makes sense. And so due to that, we have 20-year warranties on ours, but they can go as far as 30 years. If there is any type of malfunction, though, we replace that free of charge. Macon-Bibb doesn't have to worry about paying or any type of wear and tear on the panels. We make sure to handle that.
Okay, so I'm not necessarily against this. I would just want you to know I have some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
But when they do wear out, what do you do with old, worn-out panels? Don't bury them in my backyard now, okay?
Right. So we work with it's a company, it's an organization. I'm slipping on the name right now, but I can get that information over to you. But we basically turn the panels over to them, and what they do is they scrap and recycle the parts that can be scrapped and recycled, and then dispose of the rest of it in a safe manner. So that's all that company does. And so we lean on them for that expertise.
So they dispose of them in a safe manner. What does that mean? Well, that's what I'm saying. Don't bury them in my backyard.
Right.
I don't know if that's what considered a safe manner.
Got it.
Are there things in there that could be dangerous to the environment?
No, it's not any type of liquid or it's basically just rare earth metals. So they actually come from the ground, and the top and the bottom of the panels are actually made of glass. So it's really no different than looking at like a circuit board that's inside of your computer or somewhere else, with glass on the top and the bottom and aluminum around the sides. And so again, I'll make sure to get that information over to the commission, exactly what happens to each and every panel. but we actually depend on this company to recycle the panels in a sustainable manner.
So this, putting solar panels like on the sheriff's department parking area,
Mhm.
that site, it helps with just a small amount of the electric cost. Is that right?
That's
Not,
correct.
not even 50%.
Right. So we average at about 30%, 30 to 40%, and we do that on purpose. And that's because power isn't, you don't use power in a constant manner. And so what we don't want to do is overgenerate and you start pushing power back to the grid. What we like to do is just capture the amount of power that would represent what the baseline would be at a certain time of day. So for instance, we're in here now and the power consumption has actually risen by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone may be out of this building by about 5 o'clock, but the sun may still be shining until 8 or 9. We would try to offset that amount that would still represent the time from 5 to 9 instead of over-generating and pushing a bunch of power back to the grid between those hours when no one's here.
When you have these ground-mounted panels,
Yes,
which
ma'am.
you showed one of these up here, you cut down a lot of trees and bushes and stuff like that
Mm.
that are good for the environment,
Mm-hmm.
or good for us maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I have an issue with that.
Understood.
Do you try to find sites where you don't have to destroy the environment?
Right. That's a great point.
Former Mayor Rickard is shaking his head over there.
Yes, and yes, we do. We try to aim to stick to rooftops and areas that are urban in nature already. Macon is growing at an amazing pace, and so there are a few places that we've looked at before where the city's not sure how they want to expand right now. So we'd hate to be in a place where you all need to be later. And so because of that, especially with the most recent sets of installations, we've just stuck to rooftops.
Well, yeah, and that I can see that being a good place to put them. I just worry about the ground-mounted ones, and we got some out there on 247. It's just I go past these places, got fields and fields and fields of solar panels, and I wonder, in 10 years, what's going to be happening to them? Are you going to have to replace them all, and where do you dispose of them? That was a question I had.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of have this love-hate relationship with the thought of the solar panels,
Understood.
and how much they generate for us to save money. And I mean, I know you had that in the presentation. It just takes a while to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see what else I wanted to ask you about. So it's just about 30% savings in electricity?
About 30% offset. The savings will come over time. Again, we try to start at parity or below. And over time, because our cost of electricity is much lower than the cost of electricity historically growing over time, the savings will show in that manner. So it's not necessarily a linear relationship, but we are not just bound to the contract. I mean, our partnership with you all is one in which we're not going to charge you more than you currently pay for that electricity.
Okay, so we pay for what is produced on a site.
Yes, ma'am.
What do we pay for that?
Per kilowatt hour, it averages all sites together. I think it averages to about 8-9 cents per kilowatt hour. And so again, that's a straightforward equation. If you use 1,000 kilowatt hours, it will be 1,000 times 8.9 cents. Unlike I guess any other bill where you may have to do some additional charges or math to try to figure out what that average rate is. And so
You're starting to see solar panels on homes, roofs, and I don't know how much that helps in the savings of, you save the energy from solar panels,
yes,
correct? Or can save it,
right.
so I just don't know how much savings. I guess it's going to take years and years and years for us to see a real big savings. You had 2026, I think, on here, or what was it?
Right. So by 2026, you'll see a great increase in savings. Actually, I mean, right now, there's an additional $16,000 that could have been realized by this point. We've been working with your utility partner on a few tariff changes that should have been made, back when these sites were installed, that have not been made yet, and that makes a change in the billing. Had those changes been implemented in a timely fashion, we'd be looking at a much higher savings now. But I think that's neither here nor there, as because of the simple fact that you're not paying more, you're saving money, and you're still able to save the environment. So we'll continue, working with the facilities team and with your utility partner to make sure that those changes happen. And we have conversations with them, I say on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, to get an understanding of what needs to happen and make sure that the changes are implemented.
One more question. Where are solar panels built?
So these panels are, the ones we source are actually manufactured in North Georgia. It's a site near Dahlonega, but the company is Q-Cells, and so they are, actually built here in the state. And
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you for indulging my questions. For right now, that's all I wanted to ask, unless Mayor Rickard has something to offer.
If somebody's got a question that he needs answered, he can step up at that time. We got 5 people waiting, so I want to move on to other commissioners. Commissioner Howell?
Before I start, Chris, could you pull up the next to the last slide? It's not my forte, so I'm a little confused, and I got a couple questions. That one works right there. So how long have we been doing this system, this partnership?
So the first site would have been installed in 2018, but then the rest of the sites were installed after 2020. So
I guess the main 2 in question, according to this, is the South Bibb Rec Center and the Juvenile Justice Center.
mhm.
When were they installed?
South Bibb would have been installed in 2020, and Juvenile Justice was just installed last year, with it coming online in the second half of the year.
Okay. So I'm a little disheartened when I look at this chart and see that so far all this greatness and this leadership that we've done in Georgia, and we're a leader in the state, and we're all that, and we've saved $134 in 3 years. That's not real impressive. On this, there's a note here that says South Bibb County Rec Center and Juvenile Center, where the rate schedule change has been delayed. These account for $15,000 in lost savings. You want to explain that one to me?
You can go ahead, Mayor, if you want to talk and I can explain it too.
Let me just say, first of all, I got on my badge because I want you to know up front that the Cherry Street Energy is a client of mine as I practice law now. So I'm actually here on their behalf, but I've got a lot of experience, as you might imagine, especially with the solar arrays that have been installed in Macon-Bibb County. The best way, Commissioner Howell, to answer your question is to consider the rate you are currently paying for electricity. When you're dealing strictly with Georgia Power, correct me, Kenneth, if I'm wrong, they've got something like 64 different rate schedules that you can pay. And you say, baloney. No, it depends on a myriad number of factors. But one that may make sense to you is, what time of day do you use it? If you use it at night, you use electricity at night when most folks are asleep, you get a lower rate, and you can ask for a schedule that would give you a lower rate if you promise to use it at night, because they got extra electricity. They'd like to virtually make anything on it that they can, because most people are asleep. If, on the other hand, you want to do it in the middle of the day when they are reaching their peak and they're trying to meet everybody's demand and everybody's dialing the air conditioner up and this, that, and the other, you pay more in the middle of the day for power that you're using then, because they're trying to discourage your using it at that point in time and can't you do this in the morning or at night when you get home, not in the middle of the day? So part of the money that they have been able to save is by analyzing the rates that we were paying to Georgia Power. The same slide that was up there that's got the $73,000 figure, A lot of that is savings because they have requested and changed the rate schedule that you were paying for Georgia Power. So they've realized savings to you. It's not just $134. You have realized significant savings in what you were paying to Georgia Power. The second thing is that when does the sun shine the brightest? Obviously in the middle of the day. In the middle of the day, in the heat of the day, is when these solar panels work the best. And that's when Georgia Power is trying to discourage your using of their power because they're trying to meet everybody else's power load. So if you can get on a different rate schedule and you can tell Georgia Power we will use less energy in the middle of the day, they'll put you on a rate schedule that's more beneficial to you because you're promising to use less electricity in the middle of the day when they're trying to meet everybody's demand. It's that we are still trying to get in place for the South Bibb Recreation Center, the new rate schedule that we've been talking to Georgia Power for 2 years now about, okay, we're plugged in, now we're producing this stuff in the middle of the day, so go ahead and get us on this other rate. And I'm going to call on my friend Rob Riles to come up and support me on this. If I misspeak, he can drag me off by the collar. We have not yet been able to get Georgia Power to initiate the new rate for South Bibb Recreation Center. If we had been able to get Georgia Power to change the rate schedule over, then there would have been a 16,000, hot doggies here. That would have been a $16,000 savings. But Commissioner Howell, if we only save $134, and it costs you nothing to save $134, they take care of the upfront costs, they take care of the maintenance costs. The only thing you're doing is paying for power you actually use, not that gets fed back out onto the grid. You use it in the facility where it's generated. So whatever's generated in South Bibb is used at South Bibb Recreation Center. It's not put back on the grid and sent someplace else. They design it so that it's that way, and you get the benefit of a lower tariff rate from Georgia Power. So you're actually saving money and saving the environment. That's my pitch to you. And the last thing I'd say is I got into this because I knew the family that owns the business now. The Chaining family from Macon-Bibb County. This is Michael Chaining, who's up in Atlanta now, lives in Atlanta, so the company is based in Atlanta now. But the name Cherry Street is because of the family business. It was here on Cherry Street when they started. So no, I'm very proud to represent them. I think they do a great job for us. I think it's beneficial to Macon-Bibb County. I think it's good for the environment. And yes, Commissioner Wynn, they do try to minimize damage to the environment by placing panels and disposing of panels. All that reflects kind of their outlook on what they do and why they do it. So I'm proud of them. Rob, how about correcting anything I've said that's wrong and see if you can't finish this up?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, you're correct in your assessment. Some residual bonuses and benefits of the project, the program is, and I know that there are varying opinions about how aesthetically pleasing the solar array is, and I tend to see both sides. But the solar array over at the Sheriff's Department, Sheriff's Investigative Center, looks like a regular. They're not broken up, and staggered like you see them in the field. It's like almost a solid array. One benefit of that is, and I've got some slides I can, that I can make available. I'd much rather get out up under that canopy in a storm than not, and I'd much rather my car be parked under there and get the benefit of the shade in middle Georgia heat. But one other benefit is when they install a canopy like that, they also have to provide lighting underneath. So all the lighting on that parking lot, and it's extremely well lit, is LED lighting installed at their cost. They lit my parking lot that I didn't have to light. They maintain those lights because the whole infrastructure belongs to them. I don't have to maintain those lights. Those are just extra benefits on that type. I'm like Mayor Miller, I prefer the rooftop installations because they are more out of the way. They're less susceptible to vandalism, for instance. But the main issue there is coinciding the life cycle, like you were talking about, of the panels with the life cycle of the roof. So you don't have to remove them to replace a roof. So when we put new roofs on, and we're fixing to we opening a bid Thursday to put a new roof on the fire admin headquarters building. As soon as we get that roof on, it's brand new. I'd love to look at that one, let them analyze the rates there, see what we can do about putting a solar installation there. One thing that was mentioned is when they're in the business of making power just like the traditional power providers are. We're not going to reduce our bill by 30% because we're subsidizing the consumption by 30% solar, because we got to buy the solar power just like we buy the other. But we are guaranteed to pay less for the solar from day one than we are at that time paying for the traditional power. We have a maximum escalator locked into the contract so that the solar can't go up unless the traditional power does. Traditionally, historically, the Public Service Commission keeps the traditional power providers at bay for 3 to 5 years, and then they'll approve an increase. That increase historically has been anywhere from 3 to 5%, when my solar escalator is much lower than that. So if they do jump, they jump at a higher rate than solar. So that gap between what we're paying for solar over the 20-year contract and life cycle of the panels for that facility just gets wider and wider on savings. And with increases that have been discussed and our potential for the recent coming years, that's substantial. And that's how we do. And questions have been raised about how can they produce the power, and it not cost us anything, and they bear the brunt of the installation cost for the infrastructure. It's because they're producing that power cheaper than the traditional power company can, and their distribution from a power plant miles and miles away, and they got to maintain those lines, maintain a whole lot more infrastructure than Cherry Street Energy does on site. But to begin with, it's not a tremendous amount of savings. We have to buy the power whether we buy it from solar, but another residual benefit is when they install these arrays, they hire local people to install, they hire local people to maintain, so they're creating local jobs. The lighting that we was talking about on the parking lot is another benefit. There's a lot of residual benefits, and as that gap between traditional power and solar power gets wider, we save more money.
So a follow-up on that, number one, a sidebar. I wish that South Recreation Center would have looked at this same deal with the parking lot lights, because we wouldn't have the problem we got out there now if this is such a great savings. But anyway, I'll pass on that. Let me say, first and foremost, I'm all about private enterprise, and I don't have a bit of problem with that, but it looks like you guys got a pretty good deal with the city of Macon. In South Bibb County, during COVID, when the park was basically shut down and there wasn't a whole lot going on, but you were producing energy, what happened to that energy? Was it sold back to the grid?
During COVID, at which site are you referring to? South Bibb County.
Or any time. If you're overproducing what we're needing at any given time, is that put back on in the grid? I'm just curious.
So that power is put back onto the grid if it's ever a time when we're producing more than what your facility needs. We can remotely shut down power if, for instance, COVID came back again, and we needed to shut everything down, we could shut everything down. But in the instance where power needs to go back to the grid, it does, and that is actually credited on Macon-Bibb's billing. So we're not allowed to charge you for that, and we don't take the proceeds from that. It shows up on your Georgia Power bill as a credit.
As a savings to us, because I know that
Yes, sir.
I know that if Georgia Power buys back, if you're selling it to them in general, if I had a system at my house, they have to pay whatever the going rate is, regardless of what you're paying for it. So sometimes there's a little offset there. I'm just trying to. I know just enough about this to be dangerous, but I guess you've noticed. But so. At South Bibb, if we're not using all the electricity at any given time, that the whatever's being produced is going back on the grid, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and we get the credit for that?
Yes, sir.
There are some exceptions in some facilities that won't allow us to do that, and that's Georgia Power's rules, and that's That's mainly downtown. The very first one we did over at Sheriff's Investigative Center had to put inverters that would ramp down and not allow any more production than was being consumed at the time in the facility. They made sure we did that. We had a power witness test with Georgia Power to prove that it wouldn't over-generate what was being used in the facility, and that's to protect. They're overly and understandably overly protective of the downtown underground grid, and so that they won't allow any backfeed on the underground grid downtown. So that's one facility that the inverters are designed to ramp down, not produce more than we use.
Oh, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Commissioner Jones?
Yes, sir. 2 or 3 questions. What percentage would you say we are solar in Macon-Bibb County?
I can't speak to the.
Maybe Rob can tell us. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Since the goal or the object is to subsidize the total consumption in the facilities that we do look at, is 30%. We're 30% solar in those 9, about to be 12 facilities because of the 3 that you all just recently, thankfully, approved. So that's not overall. I mean, we have 200 properties, but for each facility that we install in, roughly a third solar consumption.
Okay. And they have Kenneth, you said we have a 20-year warranty, so if something runs out 19 years and a half, you just replace it?
Yes, sir.
Or what if it's 20 years and a half? What happens then?
If it's 20 years and a half, then we have to take the hit on that. And so, I mean, it's something that we've already more or less put into the
20-year warranty, but if it goes beyond 20, you're going to replace it anyway
That's right.
at no cost to Macon-Bibb County?
That's right.
Okay, my own personal experience is I've got a security gated home on my driveway, and it has a solar panel, but what happened when it rained 2 or 3 days, I got locked into my own property. Wasn't fun. Luckily, I have a back gate that goes out on the Drury, so I was able to escape. But then I ended up putting an electrical backup. And then it overcharged the battery over time. And so right now I'm back to just total electricity. I had to do away with the solar. So that's my personal experience with it. But I'm all for a well-balanced approach as far as Macon-Bibb County, and I thank Rob Riles for that, his leadership. When I look at America and I look at the world, I see people who have gone too far too fast. Countries like Sri Lanka, Albania, Portugal, South Africa, Argentina, United Kingdom, the Netherlands, France, England, Canada, and Germany, they're all having rolling black because they've gone too far too fast. Probably aware of that, right?
I am aware of rolling blackouts.
In our own United States of America, we have them right in California. That's a common occurrence.
Right.
But I tend to think we govern a lot better than the state of California here in Georgia, and especially in Macon-Bibb County. So those are my concerns about it. I don't want to ever go too fast. My theory is let's develop. First of all, I think we should always be an oil-based economy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we are, and we should remain.
Yes, sir.
But we should develop it side by side with what we have. So I don't challenge what you're doing here, and I think it's been slow, and it's been balanced, and it's been side by side, and it's been done responsibly. So
Yes, sir. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Bronson?
Hey, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. So I appreciate the fact that we are being mindful of our footprint. We only have one home. We have to do what we need to do to take care of it.
Yes, sir.
So I'm all for that. My question, that 2-part question technically is I think you've already addressed, and a lot of my colleagues up here have already asked some of the questions that I did have, so I appreciate the responses on that end. The amount of time that it takes to complete a site, what's kind of the average time on that piece in? And then the other question I had in regards to, of course, power outages and so forth. I think back to the Mother's Day storm and how the power outages took place, and any other storm that we have that takes place. If we needed to house citizens in our gyms and our recreational centers and so forth in the event of emergency, that energy that we are having, what's the use or possibility or platform, should I say? Good information. What is the use in regards to backup energy? Are we able to harness that energy that we've saved basically from the solar panels to be able to be used during emergency time frames?
Good question. I guess starting with the last question.
So the first question was just more so time frame, right? When we look at this, what is the average time to do to get a building set up on a particular site?
Right. So from the time of mobilization, we're averaging 3 to 4 weeks. Obviously, that depends on the type of installation. But the entire process, if you include some of the stuff that we do internally between the design, the analysis, you may be looking at about 3 months. But only about 3 weeks of that would affect Macon-Bibb on site. So that's from mobilization to interconnection. The only time that can be delayed is if we have trouble getting on Georgia Power's books. But again, everything would be complete on our end. There wouldn't be any blockages or anything. The system just wouldn't be on until we are able to meet Georgia Power and make sure that they approve of the installation as it stands.
Okay. Before you go into that second question in regards to backup energy, when we start looking at solar panels and the source as far as stated before with the peak hours, right? What I have seen in different countries and different states is that they utilize, of course, the motion sensors. That way, if a person is not in a room, those motion sensors are already activated by the solar panel. So it's the connection for that power source is strictly to that solar panel. So is that kind of a similar setup that we have right now, or do we have the capabilities of doing that setup?
So the capabilities are there to do that setup, but that's not the current setup because the current setup, I guess, there's always trade-offs. We are actually tying in exactly on the same connection as Georgia Power, and that is to make sure that there aren't any interruptions. If there's a malfunction with the panels, Georgia Power, instantaneous, you wouldn't know the difference.
Okay.
But because of that, we have to abide by Georgia Power's rules in a lot of those cases. And so, again, as Rob stated, they are very careful, as they should be, about what happens on their grid.
Okay.
So we're just very respectful about that. And right now, the rules are not in place for us to make that type of connection.
Tracking.
But in essence, and what Ken's talking about is only and directly to the solar panels, no. But the way the system is set up, we saw on the screen, is the traditional power source feeds the panels just like the solar panels feed our indoor panels. As long as the solar panels are producing, we're using solar first to offset the consumption of the traditional power. So any of those measures that we've installed as far as motion sensors for energy savings in that facility are actually being used or are being operated by the solar because that's what we're using at the time when it's producing. So yes, when the solar panels are producing, everything that we've done in that facility to save energy through ESCO energy savings projects and whatnot are actually being fed by the solar at that time when they're producing. When they're not producing, if it's a cloudy day or if at night, then they are connected to the Georgia Power circuits.
Okay.
Yes.
And in regards to that last part, as far as backup energy goes for Parks and Recs, me personally, I would love to see a big push on getting our Parks and Recs completed first. Mm-hmm. So I know we've already had kind of a similar discussion in regards to that, so you'll see some information from me on that end. But I would love to see the Parks and Recs get completed first, so that way, in the event of emergency does happen, we do have the capabilities of taking care of our citizens in that emergency.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here's another interesting fact that we're working with EMA now to see if we can get generators, substantial size generators out at South Bibb, because it is a big rec center for fallout shelter. And since we already have solar, we have traditional power, we'll have 3 sources of redundant power should we have an event like that, so that we will be better prepared for it.
Thank you for that.
Ms. Williams.
Okay, thank you very much. Young man, would you refresh me on your name?
Kenneth.
And your Kenneth?
Kenneth, yes, ma'am.
If you'll speak into that microphone as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kenneth Darasol.
Darasol. Okay, can you tell me 2 or 3 things about yourself and your training?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm from Louisville, Georgia, small town in East Georgia. I came towards Macon and Atlanta to attend Georgia Tech. So I got my degree in industrial engineering. I started my career with Johnson Controls, which is, like an energy ESCO.
Yeah.
And from there, I moved to Home Depot to do energy management. My final role before coming here was energy and sustainability manager in Fulton County. And so my solar training came between the Fulton County job and my job at Home Depot. So outside of that, through Cherry Street, I've received a few certifications, and I also work with our workforce development group. So if there is some information that is new or coming up, that our operations team is looking at, they share that with us as well. But outside of that, I'm more or less sales, and I'd bring in like our experts if you came to me with some super technical questions.
Well, it seems like you're doing well.
Thank you.
Here, because you've answered a lot of questions, and it's good to see former Mayor Rickard here, and of course Rob always is on top of stuff. When we on a previous, thank you for that Black History moment. When this issue was brought to us on a previous commission, I just said, gosh, we can put the horses and the buggies away. We can put the wood stoves, we can shut them down. We can shut down a lot of stuff because we've opened up a new avenue for us as far as energy, how it's produced, how we use it, the cost of it, and the control of cost. The only question I had, and I'm glad, and you've responded to that, was I came out of that meeting thinking that this was all totally free to Macon-Bibb. Nothing's totally free. And so today you've answered my question about maybe I didn't read the original resolution or ordinance or whatever, but I did think that there was no cost, and I don't know how in the world you think that kind of thing.
Right.
But today you've let me know that there is a cost, but it's less because you're basically replacing non-renewable with renewable. And to me, that's bringing us out of the horse and buggy days. And I just think with the environment, with everything that's going on in this world, we're finally moving away from our horses and buggies and our dependence on oil and coal and that stuff. Is there any more coal anywhere?
There are
There's
a few
a
coal
little-
plants in Georgia.
There's
right?
a little. It's a lot. Too much. Huh? Anyway, I think we have got to change our mindset. And one other thing that I want to say is y'all need to kind of take a look at that Project SOAP that the entity that the mayor and I both serve on, the Development Authority, entered into with Georgia Power, and it's out South Bibb 247. It's that big array of, and maybe that's the wrong word, of solar panels, and that is going to serve as the backup for power for Robins Air Force Base if there's ever a problem there. Mayor, you were a part of that Development Authority when we started that project. So just take a look around, and we can be proud of this particular project. And thank you so much for indulging me and telling me more about yourself, because there's some folks that are listening that needed to hear that about that expertise. But thank you, because my questions have been answered, and let's move forward and get some more done.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Commissioner Watkins?
And I think I share a lot of Commissioner Lucas' kind of same initial sentiments that I was under. I think when we were initially discussing it,
Yes, sir.
the idea of things being free was more vocal at the time. But from the discussion today, I think that makes it's a little bit more clear
Yes, sir.
that there are utility costs that the county is going to incur, and this is just I guess a dual power source for us.
Yes, sir.
And again, the savings, the attention to the environment, all that's understood and very much appreciated.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I think I'm tracking everything. So like you say, no upfront cost to us,
Right.
no maintenance fees,
Right.
and clarify for me a little bit. So when you talk about the price certainty concept, is it locked in today and it doesn't change, or I heard earlier there was some type of escalator. You made mention of an escalator, so it will change over time, I guess. But
Correct. So by price certainty, we mean you would know today how much you would pay us for a kilowatt hour of power 15 years from now. There's a 1.5% escalator, which is much lower than the utility escalator, which is how the savings end up stacking up over time. So we start lower and we raise at a lower rate. The difference is you don't know how much you'll be paying your utility in 10 years per kilowatt hour. And so what you can do with that, you can kind of use that information to hedge how much you'd like to offset. And so the price certainty is there in the sense of you already know what the cost of our electricity will be at any time during the contract, and that's rare.
out of curiosity,
Sir.
let's say for some strange reason, like a bunch of liberals take power in the PSC and they go through a phase of cost cutting. What happens to our contract? Like if the Georgia Power was forced to cut by 10% or 2%, what happens in this space?
No, that's never happened.
Again, Democrats have never been in power as long as I've been alive.
But should it happen,
Correct.
the contract is set to where we would lower that 10% as well. We have to stay at parity or below Macon-Bibb's contract.
And in terms of I guess one thing that'll help me too, in terms of scale, I don't know, I've asked a couple times, like in terms of energy cost overall, how much does the county pay? Like give me a better sense of scale when we're talking about these numbers. Like how much is $134? Like if we only paying $200 a year.
That would definitely be a finance question. I couldn't tell you what the total energy cost is monthly or annually. But according to the contractor, let me elaborate on the escalator. The rate that they can increase is no less than zero, but it is the lesser of the 1.5% down to zero, because based on what the traditional power company does. So if they don't raise, it's zero. As far as the free, this technology and this infrastructure is extremely expensive. It costs us nothing. What they're getting out of the deal is return on their investment for building it in the first place. We have, and with the rising costs and the volatile cost of material and labor, we don't have to worry about it. We have no risk. Once they lock in our rate lower than our traditional power bill rate, then that's their risk. If steel goes up, or if panels go up, or if labor goes up, hard to find labor, got to pay more to get labor, that's their problem. It's not ours. And just like we was talking about earlier, if we have a problem with a panel on any one of these solar arrays, they're monitoring that, and I promise you, they're out there immediately to fix it, because they're in the business of selling solar power. If there's an issue and it's not putting out, they're not making anything. They stay on top of maintenance. it belongs to them. It's their responsibility. I don't have to send an electrician out. Don't have to tie up any of my human resources. None of my budget. Nothing goes to it's their deal.
Yeah, and like I say, it's a lot clearer now because I think a lot of our perceptions were it was free to install and it's free to use, and it makes for an unclear business model. Like, how is this company going to exist if that's what's happening? But it's easy to digest that. We're paying a monthly utility fee, and those fees are offsetting the old cost, and eventually y'all start making money.
Confusion. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So one of the things I'm also curious about so also just future forecasting. If there is a large change in the amount, like right now it's close to parity. If the PSC were to go crazy and increase by 20%, and there was a large difference, are we able to increase the 30% that we use to realize more savings for us at those type? How does our scalability work in those type of sense? If we wanted to go 90%, 80% solar power to capture whatever savings exists over time.
The 2015 HR bill, HR 57, that allows for third-party purchasing agreement for purchasing solar power, has a maximum size 125% of peak demand output of array that can be built for any facility.
Oh,
So we
smarty. So sixth grade, bring it back down just a little bit.
There's a maximum size that we can put on any facility, and it's based on the HR bill that allowed us to enter this to begin with. So we can't really continue to increase on that particular facility. We can only capitalize on future savings as that gap gets wider by installing more facilities.
What I heard is the government's protecting the big guy by making the cap. We could put more on there, but there's a government law that prevents it.
We can only.
And so that means that Mayor Rickard and the lobbyists got a little bit more work to do for renewable energy.
There's a maximum size we can put on the facility.
Okay. So that 30% is somewhat capped by some type of law.
That's correct. So we
Okay.
look first at your usage. There may be a difference between the two, and if it's there and you did want to increase, if it was financially feasible, we could do that, but only to that amount that is capped. And so, in most cases,
quite 30% is not quite the cap, but it's pushing it.
That's correct.
Okay.
In a lot of cases.
I can track with that.
Okay.
And so and like I say, with lobbying and more comfort, that'll probably change over time. Okay. And I think you explained the concept of tariff was the same as the rate differences that Mayor Rickard was explaining a little earlier.
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess I'm still trying to just quantify. 850 kilowatts were created or produced by solar power.
The 850 kilowatts is the capacity of the system at any given time. So that's the total demand that you're creating instantaneously.
That's the 850 is the demand.
Correct. If you wanted to think about it in that way,
Maximum output of all of our solar
at any given point in time.
That's almost a megawatt.
Okay, 850 is the max that we can put out.
Yeah.
That's right. And then the number to the right of that is how much you've produced in actual energy since inception. So.
Okay, and at do we know, like, I guess you combine traditional power and solar power, what our maximum is? Or would it be the 30, I guess the other 70%?
That's correct. So as from a demand perspective, your utility company will be responsible for always maintaining the infrastructure to cover that 70%. And so right, we can only cover to a certain point, and then the way that the law is set up is in a way that makes sure that the utility is there in the case of an emergency and to have that demand. So
I get it, and it's pretty cool. I share some of Commissioner Howell's sentiments that a lot of work for $134, but like I said, there are some secondary benefits to the environment, and yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, when you consider the overall consumption, and at a half a cent per kilowatt hour used, it adds up. But we're really poised, if in fact there are substantial increases in traditional power in the next 2 or 3 years, we're really poised to increase that savings. And bear in mind too, the majority of these 9 have gone online in the past year. In the past year.
No, cool. Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, the good news, everybody watching at home is falling asleep, so we can move forward with our meeting. Commissioner Wynn, I think you had a follow-up question.
One more, I'm sorry, I started out,
Okay.
but I'm end up. I'm thinking about the panels over there by the sheriff's office. They're flat, or it's a flat roof, pretty much. How susceptible are they to hail damage? We have our share of hail in this area, similar to a roof, you know. So do they have? Are they able to hold up to hail very well?
So they're outdoor rated for extreme weather conditions, and again with the real-time monitoring. If a hailstorm did go through, we would know, the next day how those panels are performing, and then it would be on us to get in there as quickly as possible and make any replacements or repairs, because that is also our source of revenue. And
So they are susceptible to hail,
in the
like
sense
a
of
roof.
right, in the sense of anything else being susceptible to hail. So they are meant to be outdoors, and they're outdoor rated. But anything is breakable.
Yeah,
in that
the
sense.
ones that are at an angle, and I think Rob wants to say something, but ones at an angle, are they less susceptible to damage from weather things, or?
It would definitely depend on which way the wind's blowing, on whether it's a glancing blow or a direct hit and whatnot. But the important thing to remember is it's not our risk, it's theirs. If they're damaged, they'll come out and replace them immediately so that they're still producing power. It's no cost to us. And as far as I know, that was the very first one we did. That's the first one we installed. It was actually the first one in the state of Georgia to take advantage of the HR bill. And Cherry Street Energy was actually trailblazing. And a lot of the slow progress the first few years, and the reason we've just picked up progress in the last year, was getting online with Georgia Power and working with them to work. It was the first time it's ever done. So protecting the downtown grid, we had to navigate through that process and what they would allow and what they wouldn't allow. We've had to negotiate working with them to request rate structure changes and that benefit us as a whole. Now that we're working more in tune with them. I understand, and he said we have had difficulty with trying to get 2 rate changes changed. One of them is because 1 meter feeds 2 facilities, and they would prefer us to split them up, but they've been under 1 meter forever, so we're trying to keep it the same so we can keep the same size of rate on the property. But we're working with them, and they're working with us. They're excellent partners. We have no issue whatsoever with Georgia Power.
That's correct.
They're excellent partners, and so we're working with them.
So sounds like Georgia Power still has a lot of control and dictates on things that we do with
they're
solar
protective
power.
of their infrastructure, and that's understandable.
That'll never go away.
Right,
I realize
right.
that.
And they're good partners. They've always been good partners for us. We've had over 330 Georgia Power accounts, and we work with them. They work with us.
I guess I'm going to end by saying this because I said I have this love-hate relationship with aesthetically, at least for the solar panels. Rob, just put them on buildings, okay? And there's a song, and Rob, you remember it, by the Counting Crows. It was a song. They let's see what it says. They cut down paradise. They cut down trees. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. The way I see this is we're cutting down our trees, our peaches. I go out through Butler, and I see all those solar panels. And I used to go traveling over there for business and see this beautiful green area with peach trees and peach blossom and trees. We don't see that anymore. We're cutting these things down. So that's why I say keep it. The same thing in Europe. I went over there, and you'd see all this greenery. Then you come over hill and see these awful panels covering these beautiful hillsides. I just think aesthetically they're not attractive. Do something to change that, or just put them on buildings, Rob.
Well,
Okay.
The only ground mount system that we have is just a few rows out in a right of way anyway, right behind animal welfare.
Yeah.
For the same reason, basically.
Well, and then do you have to if you have to replace a roof on a house, then it's on. Or a building.
Move the panels, we put the new roof on, they put them back on.
Okay.
At no cost to us.
Okay. I am done. Yay.
There's no vote today. We're going to go ahead and move on. Thank you guys for being here today. If there's any follow-up questions, what you need?
I just like to note that song is by Joni Mitchell and not the Counting Crows.
Commissioner Watkins.
I was curious. I've been curious for some time. when you're going out 247, there's like a large, I would call it a solar farm. I didn't see it in the 9, and who's responsible for that? Or
That was put
That's
up
the-
to
that's
protect
the
Warner
central-
Robins'
that's the-
encroachment on the Air Force Base, and that's what we got $1 million check for this last year. That's what Commissioner Lucas was speaking about.
Right, that's a project of the Central Georgia Joint Development Authority. Macon-Bibb is one of the members of 14 counties, I think, that are in the Central Georgia Joint Development Authority. But it's done through Georgia Power Company. So Georgia Power is the one that actually operates that solar field for us. They lease the property, and the lease payments is what is paying Macon-Bibb back the $6 million that they raised and spent for reducing the population and encroachment way back when.
Okay, the Barack
Mayor, if
bill.
you would
Okay.
permit me to make one last closing comment. Number one, thank you for your attention and listening. Number two, back in 2016, when we were getting into this, it sounded too good to be true. No upfront cost, no maintenance cost. We're not buying the panels. We basically are agreeing to buy the power produced by the panels that we actually use. Sounded too good to be true. So, but we tried it, and it's worked out. To my knowledge, and maybe Kenny can, to my knowledge, there is no other company in Georgia that does what they do. They're not selling you the panels. They're installing the panels, maintaining the panels. The only thing they're doing is selling you the power. There is no other power producer that does what they do. So if you want to put it out for bid and say, who else is going to come in and install panels for us, maintain them, and the only thing we have to do is buy the power, I don't think you're going to get but one answer. Cherry Street Energy. They were pioneers in this. They got there first. They're a commanding presence. They now do business, and this is what I really want you to end up with. We were first. Rob Riles deserves a lot of credit for being the first solar array to do this in Georgia. Since then, Emory University has installed. The city of Atlanta has installed. The Fulton County, DeKalb County, the city of Savannah, all of those have followed suit and doing business with Cherry Street Energy. But to my knowledge, there's not another provider that does what they do. So if you want to put it out for bids, I don't think you're going to get but one answer. And it's sort of a foolproof situation with what they've got for you and the service that they are rendering to you. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We're going to move on with our next item on the agenda, item 3A. And Attorney Howard, I guess you're going to do these. And sir, I'll just ask you to just be very brief. Tell us whether, and Mr. Riles, please go. Nice to get to see you. Just tell us if there's a denial on these. Just let us know the reason for the denial, and I'll take a vote after each one of them. The first item A is Radgen 2022 Bloomfield Grocery, Macon, Georgia. You can see a copy of that there. I understand that legal recommendation is denial. Is that still the case?
It is. On 3 separate occasions, their business has been inspected and determined to be a Vice Mart, and no new Vice Marts may get alcohol licensure in Macon. So I recommend denial based on those grounds.
You heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept the denial? Motion by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Bronson. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you, sir. We'll move on to item B, which is Joyce Pick and Scratch, located at 3691 Spencer Circle.
And I recommend denial again. They represent that they are a Vice Mart, and code enforcement checked yesterday. So I do recommend denial today, but maybe at a later date re-inspect to determine if they are a Food Mart.
Okay. Commissioners, you heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Clark, second by Commissioner, Howell? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. Next one is Churchill's on Cherry LLC, doing business as Churchill's on Cherry, located at 557 Cherry Street. I believe that the recommendation is for approval. Can I get a motion to approve? A motion by Commissioner Bronson. We have a second. Second by Commissioner Wynn. Commissioner Tillman, you have a question?
Yes, sir. To the attorney, Mr. Attorney, when you go in the store, what are we denying? We're denying what beer, alcohol sale, essentially. Is that what are we denying?
For these first two alcohol licenses, we are recommending denial for malt package to go and wine package to go for the Bloomfield grocery, and malt package to go and wine package to go for MRT.
So they have a license, but we're denying renewals.
These are actually commissioner license transfers.
Okay, license transfer.
Correct.
So was it beer and wine in the store when you were in the store?
At what time are you asking? Was
I
there beer
mean,
and
whenever
wine in
the
the store?
inspection was taking place for the denial, because I think what we're hearing, and if you can answer that first.
So the alcohol license at MRT 23 LLC, Joyce Pick and Scratch at 3691 Spencer Circle, they did have a temporary alcohol license at the time of the inspection. So there may have been alcohol legally in the store at that time.
Right. So my question to this commission, because we're hearing this, is it's so easy for us to say we're denying something, but I've never heard about a penalty per se. We just think that, oh, we're going to deny them. So if these places are in violations as we sit here and say, why aren't there things in place? If we bust a drug house, do we just say we give them a fine, take them to jail, and we leave the drugs in the house? So why aren't we taking the alcohol and the wine or whatever to show and we're storing it somewhere or just whatever? I don't understand that, and that's a policy issue maybe for Macon-Bibb. That why are we doing that? I mean, if you bust a house that's illegally selling or serving alcohol, you give them a fine or whatever, but you don't leave it in there. So I'm just wondering what's the impact, because we're constantly coming in here saying that we're denying and asking commissioners to deny something. Now, we don't have to take that recommendation. I'm not aware if somebody has a temporary license. We gave them a temporary license based on what? How they get a temporary license and they're selling, but when we go back now to say what? We're going to give them a permanent license. Y'all hadn't followed the guidelines.
Attorney Hall, Attorney McNeil handle that, and then I'll address it as well.
So under our code, the temporary license is something that was put in there to kind of expedite the process a little bit, so that anyone can get it's a $100 extra fee to get a temporary license that is good if they on their face meet general requirements up to the point that the commission considers a license. The temporary license can be revoked at any point if there appears to be cause not to issue the license. And so for the two that have temporary licenses, if you could clarify, the commission can revoke those temporary licenses as part of the vote to deny. And I maybe we should start specifying that going forward, that
Yeah,
hey, they have a temporary, recommend to
and
deny
I think
revoke.
so, because commissioners are not going in these stores. Those stores belong to somebody's districts. I would think that, and I don't know where these places are. I was asking Watkins where they were. But it's so easy for you all to just say, I recommend denial, I recommend approval, and we say yay or nay. But I'm saying, why are we leaving the merchandise in the store? Where's our system in place that on the spot right then, we need to call somebody to remove the stuff, or they have to remove it, until when? So we're going to let them keep all the product in the store till when? It just doesn't make sense.
We have a process set up, and they're entitled to due process. Unlike the person selling illegally, they obtain this alcohol legally. What we have in place is a Vice Mart, which allows us to, if you don't have gasoline pumps there, and you're supposed to have fresh fruit products that a lot of these places don't have, they enter into the premise of getting the alcohol license under the temporary, but when we actually inspect it, find out that they don't meet all the
Who
requirements.
obtained alcohol illegally? Who?
You talking about the bootleg place? You
Well,
go
the
in there and bust
bootleg
them.
place don't need that. How we know they obtained it illegally?
You can't
they
sell it
go
to a
and
house
buy it
without a
too.
license.
Well, that mean the person that may have purchased it, it's a dive and it's considered illegal, but those folks themselves go into the stores and buy it.
Not legally to sell.
I understand that. And see, that's a difference. And that's what I'm saying, that we need to look at these policy differences, because the IRS or the ATF that will come in, they can look at receipts and see if alcohol has been purchased legally or illegally. That is why certain clubs and so forth are required to make a purchase off a particular truck or whatever. I'm just saying it just seemed like, we're denying stuff, we're asking to be to approve stuff. I don't know the real penalty behind it. I don't think it's effective, because for years we're continuing to deny overall.
Well, it's
And,
effective because we just shut down the Lucky Store just last week because they violated
well,
that.
that's a difference.
There's
Shutting
several of those.
shutting somebody down versus, I'm saying, how do we get people? We want people to do business and making bills.
From selling alcohol.
Right. We want everybody to do business, and they're selling certain things draw people in. Gas pumps draw people in. The sale of food, the sale of alcohol. So we want people to be in compliance. I'm just saying, how do we come up with a better way to make sure that people are going to be in compliance? Because it's no different than somebody said, oh, we bust that store because they was illegally operating a corn machine and the fine was $250, but we just made $10,000 this week, so it didn't really hurt us. So I'm just saying that we should just look at it. I'm not just going to keep being in the business, wanting to be able to support entrepreneurs and just deny them or approve them without some true, what are we actually doing to make sure that everybody's in compliance, or that the rules are in place, that we're going to leave the illegal substance in the building and just walk away and say, okay, we got time to whatever. So who's there to make sure they're not selling the stuff?
It's not, they can continue to sell it until this body has gone through our process, and they're entitled to a hearing which they can request, and at the completion of that hearing, it'll be brought back before this commission, or if they do not request a hearing, it comes back before this body for a final vote. We have a process in place. We are following the guidelines set up by this body of government under Vice Marts to a T, and we're making sure that we're very active on this. Prior to the last couple of years, I'm not aware of any that were taken. Their alcohol license were taken on a regular basis, but because you said this is important to you, and it's important to these communities. They're Vice Marts for a reason, and we've been very successful in navigating the process, especially for these that are sometimes changing hands back and forth without maybe an arm's length transaction. So it's something y'all can look at policy later on, but on this particular issue, we've already voted. I want to move on to Churchill, but that can be another conversation. So we have a motion and second on the Churchills. Any questions regarding that particular item? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. And item D is PJP 2022, doing business as a corner store located at 6455 Houston Road. Legal recommends approval. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation? Commissioner Watkins, you have a question?
Yeah, Commissioner Tillman reminded me of a conversation from last week. Because again, folks are trying to figure out how to make these communities better, and density continues to be an issue. Did we get the maps, Commissioner Lucas? I was looking forward to a copy of the alcohol map. I know we said we were gonna get them.
Yeah, Barbara's working with that GIS mapping. We expected any time. We expected to have it before the meeting today, but it hasn't quite finished yet.
I mean, because all of us anecdotally are under the opinion that there's an oversaturation, and we're trying to figure out what to do about it. But visually, we can never really prove our point because we never get the map. So it's just we talk in circles. Because I get what Commissioner Tillman's saying. Like we make a denial, and again with our own vision, a lot of the stores still continue to be open and existing. And I think anecdotally we'll see that I guess they'll sell the liquor until all of it runs out, the last shipment runs out, and we're not good at enforcing or putting any teeth behind these types of things. So it makes like a confusion for us and the neighborhood, because in our mind we did something, but 6 months later, 3 months later, you drive by and it still is the same level of activity. So that follow-up, I don't know if it's supposed to come from code enforcement or the sheriff, but in some cases we would appreciate that. That makes sense.
Well, I mean, the follow-up, they do it all the time. That's why we've been so busy denying these things. I mean, if you look back at the history before the last 2 years, you'll see that you never hardly denied anything.
And we passed the Vice Mart legislation probably 2-3 years ago. We're all learning. And again, this is not a critique on anybody. It's just a assessment of the system and a request that, again, we know that we got the temporaries, and I think it was a good idea that maybe adding that the temporary ceases when we do a denial, because again, we can see something is kind of happening. It is not, again, it's not a critique on you or what's happening now. It's just, again, we all live in Macon and we trying to build it better. And it's just a continual massaging of this thing that we're trying to do. That's the policy process. So, but anyway, I yield.
Thanks for the information. I was just clearing up something with the attorney. If they want to change the policy to revoke the temporary at the time, then certainly if it comes before this body of government, we can consider that. But right now, we're following the laws that we have in place. We're going to go ahead and move on to this particular item. We need a motion and second on the corner store located at 6455 Houston Road. Can I get a motion? Motion by Commissioner Howell. That's your district, I believe. And you got a second? Second, Commissioner Wilder. Any questions regarding this item? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. Item E is Raymond Williams, Chapter 50, Disabled American Veterans located at 4493 Houston Avenue. Its legal recommends approval. Can we have a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Wynn. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Any questions? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Item F is Dabs, Inc., doing business as Dabs Cafe located at 1000 Terminal Drive, Suite 200. Legal recommends approval on this one. Is this a change of ownership?
It's an addition of their consume on premises liquor license. They didn't previously have that, and they added
Beer
it.
and wine, and now they want to add liquor. Is that right?
They're adding liquor.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Howell. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Our final item under the alcohol section is the Daisy Tequila Bar, LLC, doing business as the Daily Tequila Bar, located at 518 Cherry Street. Legal recommends approval of this. We have any questions for Attorney Howard? Hearing no questions, I'd like to make a motion for approval. So moved by Commissioner Wynn. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Any questions? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries, will be sent to consent agenda. Item 4 is acceptance approval of grants. 4A is the ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept a 2021 local maintenance and improvement grant, safety action plan grant in amount of approximately $350,000, authorizing the acceptance of funds and appropriating the required 30% local match, which is $105,000, to be paid from SPLOST. We get a motion for approval? Motion by Commissioner Wilder. We have a second. Second by Commissioner Lucas and Jones. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries to be sent to consent agenda. Item B is a resolution authorizing acceptance of fiscal year 2022 Emergency Management Performance Grant from the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency in the amount of $45,000 with a $45,000 local match provided for in-kind services to be used for the Macon-Bibb County Emergency Management Agency to provide for equipment purchases and additional funding for staff and salary benefits. Can we get a motion for approval? Motion by Commissioner Bronson. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Any questions? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries, will be sent to consent agenda. Item 5A is contracts for implementation or renewal. A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Vision Atlanta, Camp Grace for the provision of services for the Macon Circuit District Attorney's RISE Initiative, Project Safety Net, School Justice Partnership Grant Program to be paid from the Office of Justice Programs, the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, and Mitigating Threats of Targeted Violence Grant Funds. Commissioner Lucas?
Yes, if I could vote 50 times for this, and I know that's illegal, but I will cast my one vote for this because I've seen the impact already of the RISE program, and it fits right in with Macon violence prevention. It is one of the strongest programs I've seen because it's targeting youth, and it is just a wonderful and effective program.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. I will say that I've spoken with District Attorney Anita Howard on several occasions for a few hours in the last week. The RISE program is certainly part of our MVP program. That was a grant that was received approximately $700,000, but they haven't been able to implement a lot of the funding. I think they still have about 550,000. So she brings a lot of these different vendors back to us for approval because they're trying to meet the needs of the particular individuals that go through the program. There is some parental or other engagement, family engagement that's required to that. This does expire in September, and they may ask for it to be renewal if they don't use those funds. So it's something that we've got money appropriated for, but we don't have enough people participating in it to really get the full use right now. But they continue to do that and move forward with it. So we do have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lucas. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson. Any questions or concerns? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Will be sent to consent agenda. The next item is item B, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a food distribution service agreement for the provision of community food distributions on behalf of Macon-Bibb County to be paid from ARPA funds previously appropriated for this purpose. As you recall, we did a first round a while back, and we used all those funds for different organizations. We set up a new process, well, a similar process, giving preference to those that applied the first time but did not get accepted. We had a committee set up of 4 young ladies, and I'm not remembering their names right off the top of my head, for review. And all the information that you see attached to your packet listing those 15 organizations, including their name of their organization, their contact, as well as the areas they serve, should have been included in your package for around $436,000. At this time, Commissioner Lucas, you have questions?
Just wanted to say this is so important, and these organizations are providing really necessary and needed service. Just recently, I saw a news article where the additional food benefits, the SNAP program, was discontinued. And there's a question as to whether it will be reinstated or not. One of the things that we don't ever need to have, and unfortunately we do, is hunger in the greatest country in the world. And we have a lot of folks who are hungry. That's an indictment of us, but there is hope because of programs like this that have organizations that are actually working in the community to get food. And if I know all of you have seen the lines when there's the food distribution, and those people aren't just there for their, well, they are there for their health, because they're actually getting these food items and they're using those food items. So I would strongly encourage us to continue our support.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Can I take that as a motion?
Yes.
A motion by Commissioner Lucas. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Wynn. Any further questions? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We have a closed and abandoned parcel on L Street. I'll ask Ms. Beaver, who's Ms. Beaver's going to come forward to do that. Resolution to authorize the mayor to abandon any remaining public right-of-way contained within the parcel known as 520 L Street, and to remove such parcel from the official road and rights-of-way of Macon-Bibb County. Ms. Beavers, we'll hear from you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mayor Miller. As Mayor Miller introduced, I'm Adriana Beavers, Assistant County Attorney. The Land Bank Authority was approached by an adjacent property owner to the 520 L Street property, wishing to purchase it through them. So they relayed through us. And the first step, this property was conveyed to the county as a right-of-way deed. So in order just to ensure everything is above board and that all public ways are properly abandoned that may lie within those actual property lines before it is sold, we're asking for the resolution to abandon any public way remaining within the property lines, and we have a hearing set for March the 21st at 5 p.m.
Okay, Commissioners, we have a motion to approve. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Clark, second by Commissioner Jones. Any further questions? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Item B is companion item, the resolution to authorize the mayor to convey 1,300s of an acre of real property located at 520 L Street to the Macon-Bibb County Land Bank Authority for $4,000 less cost to the land bank. Can I get a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Howell, second by Commissioner Jones. Any questions? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. And we have a hearing set at 5 o'clock next Tuesday before our regular scheduled meeting at night. Change of the code. This is an ordinance to amend Article 1 of Chapter 17 of the Macon-Bibb County Code of Ordinances to add rules related to unsupervised minors and Water Safety Act at Amerson River Park to provide for penalties for violations therein. This is something that Commissioner Tillman has sponsored. And Commissioner Tillman, you want to tell a little bit about this item, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I've not received emails probably since March 7th. Something's going on with the phone, but I know it was a couple of commissioners that was interested in this. The whole thing is about public safety. I often get some reports from our coroner's office, and we had some conversations about this. And we were just imagining, and a lot of these unfortunate issues of drownings have not always been folks from Macon-Bibb County. But just imagine if there was a family reunion that was planned for months or a year out, a major concert or festival, that our river park is being shut down and resources used. Yet the coroner's office have to be on standby, the sheriff's office, and so many other volunteers, and that we cannot utilize our parks. And so I think what we're trying to do is just how do we bring more attention to the safety of citizens and residents that's going to use the river park. And although I think the fire department and some others, and even I was there yesterday, there are life vests available to everyone. It's no different than during the pandemic that the local, state, and federal government had guidelines that said that people are required to wear masks in our government facilities and so forth. So I just think properties that we own, that we have water, that we just take an extra step to ensure the safety of others, and just try to avoid and keep these things from happening. Is it going to be guaranteed? I think there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to say, I'm more experienced, I've got the experience. But you never know when there's a bad weather or a rough current. So how do you test a rough current? You test the current with a body, with a real live person. And just unfortunate that, the most expertise person that think he or she is a swimmer is losing their life and has lost their life. So it's about public safety. It's about trying to ensure that everybody utilize the park safe. I'm interested and wanted more input to hear from Commissioner of this body, because I think, although I'm bringing it forward, I think we all ought to have a true impact in public safety and what we stand on and what we believe. So I would like, if y'all are fine with it, we can move forward, but I was interested in hearing some of y'all's thoughts on it. I think we tried to do something over at Lake Tobo for boaters and for those folks over there, but I just think now that we're getting into the summer months and the spring that we need to do something for these citizens, because we don't want to just bar folks, but it's unfortunate people are losing their lives. So thank you with that, and I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner, when you have a question, I'll ask Ms. Sarah.
Yeah.
What did I say, Ms. Lucas? You must be on my mind. All right.
Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Mr. Tillman, Ms. Lucas, but we'll have Ms. Sarah come up and answer any questions. But Commissioner Wynn, I know you had asked me before the meeting, you had a couple of questions, and of course, I don't know what those questions are, so now's your time to ask them.
I certainly agree that we should try to help avoid any deaths or any injuries on our rivers and our lakes. I was reading this and I was wondering about who's enforcing it. I think code enforcement or Parks and Rec can enforce these things, but are people who suffers the penalties that were in there? I know that there were about 3 levels of penalties, and one including monetary penalty. Who suffers the penalty? Is it the young person or the parents or the guardian of these people? I don't understand how these penalties are being enforced.
Absolutely. And let me just walk y'all all through the provisions. There are no rules specific to Amerson River Park, so I made a new section of the code that is just applicable to the park there. And what is going to happen is the two main rules that we're going to be enforcing from Commissioner Tillman's request is that no person under 16 may enter any body of water at Amerson without adult supervision. There is a pond there as well as the river, so I was clear to make it both bodies of water. You can't enter without adult supervision. And then the second one is any person entering the Ocmulgee River from park property shall be wearing or utilizing a personal flotation device as intended by the manufacturer upon entering the river. So that's, you can't just be toting a life vest. You would need to be wearing it as you're supposed to be wearing it as you get into the river. There are penalties. The penalties are the same penalties as at Tobasofke. They're enforced against anybody that's legally able to be enforced against. So if you can't enforce a $500 fine against a child, I think the message would be, and because there's multiple levels of enforcement,
right.
There's a verbal reprimand. They can ask your family or you to leave the park, or they can ticket you. That's in the discretion of the officer. If you get a ticket, you go to court. The fine or the penalty in court is at the discretion of the judge in court. And so there's a lot of levels of discretion. We're not going to be fining kids $500. That wouldn't fly. If it gets to the fine level, it would be enforced against, the adult.
Is Parks and Rec supposed to be the people enforcing this?
That's who our rangers are right now, are from the Parks and Rec department. It could also be enforced by the sheriff's office if they're available.
So do we have enough people to enforce that, particularly when we start having a lot of use of Amerson Park and the river, Ocmulgee River? I'm concerned about that. I mean, I want us to avoid any further deaths there, but I just worry about how we're going to enforce it. And then if a person goes in and their parents aren't with them, but they're with an adult guardian, is that person the one that's responsible for them and would go to court if they were to be fined? How do we handle that kind of stuff? I want to do this. I think we should do this, of course, but
I think Commissioner Tillman was wanting to answer your question.
Okay.
One of the things, Commissioner, is, we always ask the question, do we have enough folks to regulate the laws that we put in place? One of the most rising issues in our community over the last few years has been pedestrian deaths. Is there enough sheriff deputies to make sure that people don't cross the street illegally? No. Is there enough rangers and law enforcement to make sure people don't drive drunk or boat drunk? The answer is no. I don't think there's going to ever be enough to prevent people from not wearing life vests and just not doing the things that they should do. What happens is a government body in Macon-Bibb is the leader that leads the way. Sometimes when you say something or implement something, the word kind of spreads and it gets around and people change up. One in particular, speeding fines in school zones. The word kind of get out when certain things begin to happen. So it's about education. It's about teaching folks. And I think what we do as a leader in this body, a lot of times if you put it forth and people hear about it, they'll just attempt to do right, whether their guardian, their parent, their uncle, the niece, and nephew, they'll remind them of something. We will have done our part to say that we're concerned and we care and we're trying to bring awareness. And that's all, because I just can't imagine a family who had plans for the weekend that could not enter the park a whole weekend at Amerson River Park who made plans. I can't imagine a concert or a special event that people plan for and just happen not to be able to enter the park because someone decided that I can handle this myself, and not realizing that the mistake of not wearing a life vest caused so much turmoil and resources in Macon-Bibb. So that's part of it.
The use of the park, because it's closed down, is of course another issue in itself, but the fact is we want this enforced because we want to prevent deaths and/or injuries that may occur on our waterways around the community. I just hope the public will listen to some of this when we talk about it, and that they will kind of enforce it on each other. You know, if you see a child getting in that may be under the age of 15 or 16, and we have life jackets there in Amerson Park on the river. I've never entered the Old Mogi at Amerson Park, but I have been in there, and there are a lot of people that, you know, coming from upstream that don't have them on. But from them getting in the park right there, I think that we should have somebody there kind of monitoring in a way to see who uses life jackets.
Yeah, we have rangers there. Whether or not there be sufficient amount to govern this, I just say that I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
I agree with that. I don't disagree with
And
that.
I don't know the young lady's name, but I think she wanted to chime in.
Yeah,
she's in
she
the
did.
audience. I don't know if she's,
Well, we
she's
don't
a
have-
victim,
yeah.
or family's a victim or something. I don't know.
I appreciate that. We don't do that on committee the whole day, so we're not going to start doing that now. We appreciate everybody for being here, and we certainly can do it next Tuesday if they want to come back to speak on that issue. But it sets bad precedent when we allow some folks and not others.
Well, actually.
But I appreciate that. Let's move on to a couple more questions, and we'll call back to you if you have any additional questions. Commissioner Howell?
First, I want to commend Commissioner
Lucas.
Tillman for bringing this up. The only problem, I do have a problem with it though. The first part, I certainly am in full agreement with it. If a child under 16 is there, they should have some supervision from a parent. I think that's where a lot of our problems go. But the second part, I've got an issue with. And just as an example, say a group of folks put in at Juliet and want to drift down to Spring Street, but when they get to Amerson Water Park, they decide they need to stop and use the facilities. According to this, suddenly they got to have a life jacket to cross from land to water. The Okmulgee is a public river, and I think we're going to have a hard time enforcing, because what this regulation says is you can't get into the water. Basically, you could put a life jacket on, get in the water, and then throw the life jacket back on the shore. So sometimes I think we jump at rules without thinking it through. Unfortunately, drownings happen. They do. I lost a good friend named Donald Barker in the late 70s at Lake Tobesofkee, and I never go to Lake Tobesofkee. I don't think about that accident. But it was an unfortunate thing, but it was a bad decision on his part as to why it happened. When a person turns 18 years old, they can buy alcohol. They can buy cigarettes. They can purchase a gun. When they turn 21, they can buy alcohol. When they're 18, they can go into the service. But we're telling people that are 18 through, I'm 65, that I can't enter the water without a life jacket at this one little specific part in the world. I think about all the times I go to the beach in Florida. It'd be like telling everybody there they had to put a life jacket on. We have to have some common sense when we get in the water. At the ocean, if the undercurrents are bad enough, they close the beach. We could do the same thing here. There's obviously times I've been to Amerson when it would be fine to walk almost across the river. There are other times when I got enough sense to know I don't need to get in that water. I just have a hard time regulating everybody because of a mistake of a few. And Mr. Tillman, you asked for input. That's my input.
Are you asking for an amendment to that to add that part or not? No? Okay, we'll hear from everybody else first. Commissioner Clark.
The state code. I'm super familiar with the state codes. I work in conservation and worked at the Riverkeeper and am on the river 3 times a week during spring. And that's a real scenario you're talking about, Commissioner Howell. But I will say that state code requires a large majority of people in any vessel to wear a life jacket, whether you do or not. I'll be the first to say I get out there on a boat when I'm fishing. I'm not going to wear a puffy life vest, while I'm casting. But that's a risk that I take, and it's a risk that other folks take as well. If you would like to square it with state code, the state code is that children under the age of 13, no matter, it's 13. 100% sure it's 13. there was a big debate at DNR last year about this. It might be, yeah, no, it's definitely 13. But and I'll look it up. If we would like to square it with state code, that's how we would do it. It would, instead of saying children under 16, to be children under 13. But I do think right now, when you get, it's roughly the same thing when you get in your boat in Juliet. If you're getting on the land that's public by FERC rules, you're required to, as you're getting in that canoe, to wear a life jacket when you get on there. And once you get away from, the land, that you can assume that risk. But generally, those are the rules. I tend to think it's not overbearing on folks. I don't think it requires anybody to put a life jacket. State code requires you to put a life jacket on when you go through Amerson Park, or you go through you go through Bond Swamp. But I think the utility of this code sincerely has to do with the people who hang out in the riverbed between March and August, who are not from here, who go drink copious amounts of alcohol, bring their children, and hang out in a riverbed without monitoring the dam releases in Jackson. These dam releases will raise the water pretty quickly without any notice. It is dangerous, and I just think that the level of irresponsibility that goes unchecked in Amerson Water Park really destroys the quality of experience in the park for people that are following the rules, and it puts a lot of people's lives at risk. When I have a 7-year-old son, and when I take my son out to that park, I absolutely avoid the sandbars in between the ramps, because what I see happening there is dangerous. It's dangerous to be in proximity of. One, I think to Commissioner Tillman's point that it raises awareness of that could change behavior in the park. I think there's a benefit to it, but also any regulations that I think this county can do to make sure that those folks, whether it be increased enforceability, increased presence of the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department has been asked numerous times to increase the presence there, and they're take this as the umpteenth request to increase the presence there while folks are in the while spring and summer are going on. But I do think another level of enforceability is necessary for folks who have repeatedly shown that they won't comply with safety measures in general. And then lastly, I'll say, when you go to, if you were to use any of our paid shuttle services or canoe services in Middle Georgia, namely Mulgi Outdoor Expeditions, they require the same things. If you have to put your life jacket on when you get in the boat. You can take it off if you're doing a longer stretch. Again, you assume that liability. But when you're going from land to boat, they require you to put it on there. So which the majority of folks that are using those boats up and down sincerely are using guided services and everything. It's not John boats that are going through the park. There are some. I don't want to say that there aren't, but I do it. But anyway, that's my take. I think this is a good measure. I think there are ways to offer friendly amendments to make it line up with state code. I think the DNR measure of it being 13 and under might square it up. But I'm completely fine with the age 16 as is. I think the more we can do, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins.
Yeah, I think it's good legislation. We are a government board regulating body, and our goal is to keep the most number of people safe. And to have a park with no regulations attached would be unsafe. I know just from my experience being here, I've been around long enough where not us, but the state, we've made texting while driving illegal to save lives. We've made people wear seatbelts to save lives. Helmets while you ride a bike, a harness while you're climbing. These are things that responsible governments that love their people suggest through law and policy to keep them safe. So I'm all for this resolution to add life jackets to our river policy. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones.
Yes, sir. I don't know anything magic about 13 or 16. Chris, would you put it up on the screen? I was just sending you a text. Can you put the resolution up on the screen?
That's the caption.
Again, I don't see anything magic about 13. You know, the state and every other governing body comes up with these magic numbers, so I don't know what's magic about 13. The human brain matures at age 26, so neither one of them qualify for that. So.
Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to commend Commissioner Tillman for introducing this. I think that we should be consistent in what rules and regulations we have on our waterways that come through our community and are in our community. And I support this, and I'd like to vote for. Go ahead and make a motion to move to approve.
Okay. Commissioner Tillman, you like to make that motion? Got a motion. Got a second by whom? Commissioner Watkins. Discussion, Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
I'd just like to be asked. I'd like to sign on as an author, and Commissioner Tillman, thank you. This is good policy.
Okay. We have a motion and second. No further questions. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Will be sent to the agenda next Tuesday. We have one no vote with Mr. Howell. We do have a need to go into executive session, but before we do so, I think Commissioner Wilder, you may have a question.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment of, I guess, personal privilege. Talking about the Vice Marts a while ago, these things are alarming, the amount of them that we have. And these people opening these stores have no interest in the public or looking out for them. I think we all probably need to look and try to watch when they go on the schedule for, Friday for Tuesday. I have went into some of the ones in my district. And in my opinion, they're putting out the bare minimum of stuff. And if somebody buys one piece of that stuff, they're already below. And if they really want to look out for the general public or the people in our district or in our county, they need to do better. And we may need to look into this and maybe put a little bit more stringent items on there to make it less possible for these to open these Vice Marts. And let's face it, we know it's for the machines, it's for the lottery tickets, the alcohol, and the tobacco. But when we walk into them and we can tell they're extremely putting out just the bare minimum to get by our vote, I'm personally against that, and we need to maybe look into possibly making that a little tighter, and just make it more realistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Mr. Lucas, you have something for the good of the order before we go back to executive session? Sponsor? Okay. We'll do that.
I had asked the legal department for legislation regarding the transit.
I'll be happy to speak with you about that. I did not add that to the agenda.
Pardon?
I'll be happy to speak with you about that offline. I did not add that to the agenda. I think our conversation would negate that.
So you.
Yeah. Sure. We're going to go into executive session. So at this time, I entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of county attorney or legal counsel to discuss pending or potential litigation, settlement claims, administrative procedures, and other judicial actions brought on behalf of the Macon-Bibb County government. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We're now in executive session. Get a motion to come out of executive session. Got a motion, get a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Good of the order, Ms. Wynn.
Us mostly, that the Cherry Blossom starts Friday. It's the biggest event for Macon, and I think we're going to be participating in the opening ceremonies at noon on Friday down at Carolyn Creighton Park.
Yep.
If you want to go, and then just let everybody know that it's a big event coming up, and hopefully we'll have good weather and a lot of participation, a lot of people, a lot of money in the town.
Okay. And we have two emails that have come out to you reminding you about press conferences this week as well. So this concludes our meeting. My bad.
I am serious about the Transit Authority. There are some people who are waiting to hear what this body's stand is on what's going on. I hope that there is some work being done, but I would like to have my legislation to come out. And then folks can make a decision as to whether they want the fares raised on the poorest citizens or not. Sometimes you gotta take a stand. I do hope work is being done.
I can assure you that work is going to be done on this issue, and I will reserve further comment to another time. But I want to be cautious to make sure that we don't purposely rush something that don't need to be rushed and have it fail, as opposed to taking enough time to make sure we got buy-in to pass it. So that's all I'll say.
Ms. Mayor, I understand, but you've got some folks who are talking about boycotting the Macon transit system, shutting it down. I am trying to avoid that. So I'm throwing that out to you.
I understand.
It happened once, it can happen again.
I certainly appreciate it, but I can tell you.
Thank you for your work.
I can tell you that we'll continue to work hard on it. I think you'll be happy.
Thank you.